I finally got around to watching something I'd only ever heard about in passing from anime circles, one of those series that people talk about like it's cultural currency rather than something they've actually thought about. I went in expecting either overhyped nonsense or ironic worship, and what I got instead was something surprisingly functional, consistently funny, and, well, structurally smarter than most modern comedy anime. I didn't like the main characters much, I didn't emotionally connect with the core group, and honestly, I didn't care about the central quest at all. But I still enjoyed it, which is not something I say often about this genre. The enjoyment didn't come from attachment. It came from tone, structure, pacing, and the show's willingness to treat its own genre as inherently absurd without pretending it's doing something profound. It isn't trying to reinvent fantasy storytelling or elevate anime comedy. It's dismantling genre logic for entertainment value and letting chaos do the work. What makes it work is that it doesn't frame incompetence as quirkiness or failure as charm. It treats dysfunction as the engine of the narrative. The characters don't grow into heroes, the world doesn't reward virtue, and the system itself is designed to punish idealism. Everything operates on petty incentives, broken structures, bad decisions, and unintended consequences. It's a series built on collapse rather than progression. And that alone puts it ahead of most modern isekai, which are obsessed with escalation, power fantasy, and artificial importance. This one understands that the genre itself is ridiculous, and doesn't try to dress it up as destiny. Welcome to the Snake Pit, where we're full of bile and venom. I'm your host, Snake Damon, and today I'm talking about an anime that doesn't just parody the isekai genre, but disassembles it from the inside by refusing to give it any moral authority, heroic framing, or narrative dignity. The series is KonoSuba, God's blessing on this wonderful world. The setup is deceptively standard. Kazuma Satu, a shut-in NEET, dies in an embarrassing accident and is offered reincarnation in a fantasy world with RPG mechanics, stats, monsters, quests, and a demon king. He's given the classic genre choice, a divine power or sacred artifact to aid him. Out of spite and impulse, he chooses the goddess herself. That single decision defines the entire series. Instead of a heroic journey, what follows is a slow-motion disaster built on incompetence, resentment, laziness, and survival instinct. Kazuma isn't brave, Aqua isn't wise, Megumin isn't practical, and darkness isn't functional. The party isn't a team, it's a liability cluster. Nothing works properly, nothing scales correctly, and nothing aligns with the genre's expectations of progress or growth. What's important is that the series doesn't pretend this dysfunction is endearing. It treats it as structural failure. Kazuma abandons the idea of defeating the Devil King early on, not because of cowardice alone, but because the system itself is broken. Survival becomes the goal, not heroism. Comfort becomes the motivation, not destiny. And honestly, every time he tries to live quietly, the narrative just drags him back into conflict through coincidence, economics, or collateral damage, rather than fate or prophecy. That framing really matters because it shifts the genre from fantasy fulfillment into, well, absurdist survival comedy. There is ecchi content, and anyone pretending otherwise is lying, but it isn't structured as fantasy gratification. It's humiliation-based comedy, embarrassment-based humor, and situational absurdity rather than aspirational sexuality. It actually functions more like Food Wars or Prison School than traditional fan service anime, where the comedy comes from escalation and discomfort rather than eroticism. It won't work for everyone, but it's at least internally consistent with the tone of the series, which is ridicule rather than indulgence. The humor holds because it isn't random. It's built on character logic, timing, facial animation, voice acting, and situational irony rather than noise and speed. The series understands comedic pacing, which is, honestly, pretty rare in modern anime, and it lets scenes breathe long enough for the joke to land instead of drowning everything in constant motion. The OVAs push harder into excess, but the core series maintains structure rather than chaos for its own sake. Personally, the supporting cast is stronger than the main party. Wiz, Vanna, Yunyun, and Chris feel more grounded, more coherent, and more like actual people trapped in a stupid system, rather than embodiments of a gag. They balance the chaos instead of amplifying it, which makes them more likable and more interesting. The main cast are funny, but the side characters are functional, and that contrast gives the world texture instead of making everything feel like sketch comedy. The series also benefits from not relying on artificial tension. There are no manipulative cliffhangers, no fake emotional stakes, and no melodramatic arcs pretending to be deep. It doesn't chase narrative prestige. It commits to being comedy first and lets everything else orbit that. Season 1 is entertaining. Season 2 is significantly stronger, and the humor escalates instead of repeating itself, which is where most comedy anime fail. It also isn't a harem, regardless of how often people misuse that label. There is no romantic structure, no fantasy fulfillment framing, no desirability hierarchy, and no relationship progression. The dynamics are dysfunctional, not romantic, and the narrative never treats them as aspirational. It sits firmly in comedy, action, and adventure. The only lingering narrative curiosity is the Devil King, and even that feels deliberately undercut. The unnamed figure who welcomes Kazuma at the beginning and continues to appear sporadically feels less like a looming antagonist and more like a structural joke waiting to land. The idea that the Devil King might already be present, already visible, already ignored fits the show's logic perfectly. Not as a dramatic reveal, not as a mythic villain, but as a banal presence that was never taken seriously because the system itself doesn't frame anything as sacred. If that turns out to be intentional, it would be a far better genre critique than any epic final battle could ever be. This isn't a deep series, and it isn't trying to be. It's controlled stupidity, structured chaos, and genre satire that actually understands the genre. It's mocking. If you hate Isekai, it works because it dismantles it. If you like Isekai, it works because it plays with it. If you're tired of power fantasies, it works because it refuses to participate in them. It's one of the few modern comedy anime that understands that failure, incompetence, and collapse can be more entertaining than growth arcs and heroic progression. Next time, I'll be talking about something different. But I'm not finished with this subject. Thanks for dropping by the Snake Pit, where we thrive on untapped potential and lost opportunities. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell, like the video, and leave your opinions in the comments, where naturally I won't read them. Until next time, stay venomous.